Okay, we are live and it is 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, September 26th, 2024. We have 4 items on the agenda, and our first one, as usual, is our public transit report, where we discuss every month the ridership numbers and projects going on involving public transit. We have Taylor here with the city staff to talk about that with us.
Thank you, council members. Excited to be with you this month to talk about our regular report plus a couple of other items. Going to the regular report, I think I'll skip the memo and go straight to the ridership and the performance reports. So I just noticed that the years are off throughout the Embark report. It says 23 instead of 24, and then 22 instead of 23. But that aside, the ridership for August and FY24 was really high compared to last year. So we are catching up on when we switched the routes over in October. So I think we'll start comparing apples to apples more because that was a very significant change. But as you can see, we're still exceeding the numbers from the previous year and at a pretty good clip. Obviously, there's new clientele in town. Students are back. We're educating, new freshmen that may have not been here before, and are encountering our routes for the first time. So hopefully they're making good use of it, and it may show here in these riderships. So we had about 38,329 for the entire Embark Norman service, fixed route and paratransit, compared to 24,440 last year. And of that total, about 36,000 of that was fixed route, and 2,200 of it was paratransit. So, and then for Norman On Demand, we started our second year officially last August, and as you can see, we had a pretty high ridership month. Again, pushing it out to everybody coming back to Norman. Last month we had 4,694 number of passengers. And then we might switch over next month to start looking at fiscal year comparisons rather than year-to-date service, as we are going into our second year. But year-to-date service, we've had almost a little bit more than 33,000 riders on that service. So we're excited to see how that continues to evolve. And we are planning to come back hopefully next month with your request of what it looks like to expand to the Norman Regional 9 area, and what I know that came out of the committee last month, but we weren't able to bring that back to you this month. So
does this take into account, I guess, increased ridership due to us expanding the footprint to cover Ed Noble Parkway and all that?
Yeah, so all of that stayed into effect since we implemented it in May with that amendment to the contract.
Would it be possible to see, next month, what the ridership is in the new or the expanded area?
Yeah, just that Ed Noble Parkway kind of up to the Healthplex.
Okay. The part that was added, just to see, what impact has it had, or a lot of people using it that weren't before because of that or whatever. So
yeah, we can
figure that might be helpful to know. Especially if we're considering expanding it further.
Right.
Okay.
Happy to answer any more questions about the regular ridership reports or the memo. Otherwise, I can transition to the next part.
There does continue to be a request for the microtransit to be expanded in sense of time earlier in the day, and or Embark Plus evolving into on-demand app-based. So that will just continue to be out there.
Yeah, I suspect that'll continue to be a request. We are actually getting close to, or I should say Embark is getting close to finalizing agreements with a new software provider that may happen next month, and then we could all migrate over to there, and that will possibly lead into the paratransit service being more on demand. It's not going to be overnight, as we continue to talk about, but as that comes online, there is a possibility of doing that much more easier than we can today.
Okay.
And then for the Norman On Demand service, again, this isn't gonna be overnight, but I have learned that their software is capable of, the concern has always been cannibalization of the fixed route system during, as we go further in the day. And there may be a time that they're able to offer folks a ride on fixed, like say, hey, you can take the fixed route ride, same from your origin to destination, here's how to get that information. Or you could take the microtransit, so you're pushing people to that fixed ride option instead of just giving them the microtransit option, if
That
that
did
makes sense.
just make me think, how many of the Norman On Demand vans are ADA accessible?
3 out of the 7, so.
Three out of 7. What if we did something where only, like, for ADA only, it was offered earlier in the day? Like if those 3 vans were able to run from noon to whenever, what that might look like if we just limit it to ADA needs.
Yeah, I think we could explore that.
That's who we've had ask about it being done earlier in the day, is people in a wheelchair that are wanting to do it, not just gonna have to do it 24 hours in advance, and like that we have this, but don't have a lot of use for it at nighttime, I guess.
Right. We could explore that. I'd hate to implement that and then we want to switch over to the paratransit maybe being on demand, so maybe we should let that flush out a little bit more.
Okay.
I don't want to delay it any more than it has to, but
Something to think about.
yeah, something to think about. I think it's very flexible, as we've learned in that service, what we can kind of tailor it to what we need, so.
And yeah, on the fixed routes, it does look like every single one is in the positive or increase in percent year over year compared to August of last year.
Yep.
Which I know is still old route system, but it looks like the change in the routes has been really positive.
Yeah.
This in the almost year that we've had them, so it's really encouraging that it continues to increase. That public transit use continues to increase. I think it's a sign that we've made it more efficient, more reliable, and it goes further out than it has before. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think ridership isn't the only metric, but I think it remains a good metric to see how, patrons will respond to changes, and I think we've seen a good change or a good response.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions? Okay.
Is it okay to move on to the second
Yes.
item?
Yes, thank you. The second item on the agenda is a discussion regarding security at the Norman Transit Center, which is something we've discussed since it opened last year, whether it's needed or not. It's heavily used. I definitely see it. And so, yeah, I appreciate having this discussion about it.
And I think it kind of pairs well with the ridership discussion of as we gain more riders and gain more usage, and I think I don't want to paint that everyone is causing issues, but I think issues will occur. So as we continue to mature as a transit system and grow, we'll have things like this we need to talk about and flesh out some more about how we're going to maintain and operate and keep a safe environment for everybody. So exactly right. We opened the transit center in October 16th of 2023, and during those initial discussions, we talked about there could be a need, but we didn't want to assume that we would need and how much level we would need right off the bat. So we wanted to monitor that activity. I'm not sure what's been in the water the last couple months, but it was moderately fine until about 2 or 3 months ago, and we just saw a bunch of incidents, reported incidents occur. So it's been really timely to come in, people concentrating due to that. So since we opened in October, we've had 31 reported incidents. So I want to make sure that's clear. These are not incidents that have occurred that we weren't notified of. There have been incidents that we've looked into on the cameras that we noticed something else happening. So there could be more, but those are the ones that have been reported. And those seem to occur mostly between noon and 10 p.m. So the later half of the day into the evening hours. And Eugene Fritz, Embark's chief security officer, may be able to help me out on this, but it has been a wide range of things. I don't have the specific incidents on me, but it's anything from folks fighting to, you know, somebody feeling uncomfortable, so they have to respond to that. Just, you know, somebody pulling out a BB gun and we're not sure if it's a real one. So there's been a range of things. So would you say that's fair, Eugene? Different.
Yeah, I mean, I could just go, so between August and July of this year, trespassing, the 1 weapon violation, drug violations, we had 2 physical assaults and 1 non-physical assault.
Okay.
So we also have like vagrancy.
Yeah. So just jumping into, I think we probably need some level of security. One option we've flushed out a little bit is Embark OKC has a downtown transit center, much like ours. It's bigger, but they have a private security contractor they work with. And in the last few months when we've been talking about this, they've been agreeable to work with them to amend their contract with that security contractor to work with us on an amendment with us to provide those services down here. We likely still need to flesh out all that and the language and everything, but that's kind of the route we've been looking at. The complete coverage, and this is for the price that they, for the contract they already have. So it's a pretty good estimate. And this is, the complete coverage would be for the 15 hours Monday through Friday and the, I guess 8 hours on Saturdays, or 9 hours on Saturdays that we operate. Would be $145,000 for a year. And then if we wanted to do like an 8 hour per day option, which would eliminate extra hours of overtime for that contractor, which cuts down on the price, it would be roughly $88,000 a year. So if we went with the 8 hours per day, based on the evidence that we have so far, I would recommend that we do the Monday through Friday later in the day hours, 2 to 10. And then Saturday would almost be covered entirely because we only operate 9 hours that day anyways, but 11 to 7. So those are my proposed times. But I've also talked with MPD about the possibility of having somebody down there, but they they're physically, but they're already down folks anyways, positions. And then they have people that are kind of spread thin as it is. So I think this might be the better option for us to get more coverage. And if you have any questions about that private contractor model, I know Eugene has a lot more information, but currently they don't carry a weapon, right, Eugene?
No weapons.
Right, so no weapons. They're there as a physical presence, and obviously they would call MPD as necessary, just like we do, but there'd actually be somebody there with eyes and ears to help de-escalate and not put bus drivers or other employees in the way of doing that, right, if they don't have to, so.
Correct.
Councilor O'Brien?
I'm kind of curious, has any of these incidents been like mental health related? I mean, you could say substance abuse, but
Yeah,
anybody having a crisis?
that, I'm not sure. We'd have to dig deeper into that to see.
And if there is a mental health crisis, how do you generally handle it?
Well, in Oklahoma City, we have a case manager. So, but down here, I mean, so 988, I believe, is all over the state. So that's one option. Does Norman PD have connections to, nonprofit organizations to connect?
Anthony, you might have to help me out here. It's been a while since I've been in all those discussions.
The 988 operator, or the 988 service provider, is community mental health. They're on Alameda, so, and that typically will go through I think if they call 988, it'll go to community mental health, or it could go maybe to 911 if it's a serious call. So I don't necessarily know if it would need to go through PD necessarily if they're calling 988, but we have the service providers located here, so theoretically response times would be pretty quick.
And we could provide the contractor all that information of contact, right? And whatever the situation calls for, that contractor would do their best judgment, obviously, in what they
And
need
I
to do.
think community mental health has a direct line too, so it might be better to just
Give
cut
them
out the
that.
middleman.
Yeah. Okay, that was just my question about that particular situation.
Obviously, this is a lot of money, I don't wanna gloss over that, but I think we'd be able to find it in the transit fund, at least for the next year, and we might have to look at next budget year of making sure we have that for the following year.
I would say I'm leaning towards option 2, just because so far the evidence points that's like the real need. It doesn't sound like daytime has that level of.
I don't wanna say there aren't incidences before, out before noon, like I said, it seems like most of them occur noon to 10, so.
What would be the strategy if it's only covered 8 hours and there's
Yeah.
something that happens during the uncovered hours?
Well, so I don't wanna say that the transit center isn't covered throughout the day, but we have a route supervisors that will be down there periodically, but if there's a wreck, if there's something that they have to go back up to the maintenance yard for, they may be pulled away and have to jump around. So the morning hours, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, could still be covered by those route supervisors as best they can. So, and they go up there and open the lobby, and they close down the lobby right now. So they're there throughout the day, it's just if there's something that they need to respond to, they have to leave there for a little bit, so. And we could try option 2 and obviously come back to the committee and other Embark and city leadership and see if we need to expand it, so ease into that.
So let's say one of the route supervisors is gone, does that just fall on the bus drivers or whoever's present to like call the cops or 988 or?
So the bus drivers typically radio into the supervisor and get direction if through their radio in the bus, regardless. So I think they'd still follow that protocol. Depending on the severity of the situation, they may have the authority just to call local law enforcement if they need to, but generally if they can, they go through the supervisor first. And sometimes if it's not, if it can wait, the supervisor will meet the bus at the transit center or en route and, address the situation. Or if it's more immediate, then they'll call authorities to help them meet the bus or go meet at the transit center, so.
Okay.
So that cost, that's based off of a contract in Oklahoma City for security at their downtown hub.
Yeah, and it's just a per hour cost, so paying this employee a per hourly wage.
Well, I just wonder if there was like a scale there, because I would assume their downtown transit hub is much bigger and much busier and has a lot more people to deal with than ours does. So I don't know if it was, takes that into account.
I don't think so. I think it's just similar to if we had an employee we were adding, if it's security personnel 1, right? It'd be the same cost if they were here versus there. So I think that's the same way this contractor views it, is it's a position that we're adding and it's at this level. So is that right, Eugene? I don't know if they have varying levels, but
No, they don't.
yeah.
Do you think that price would be comparable to if we did an RFP for that and got other companies? Would it probably be about the same, do you think?
Probably, because Embark did an RFP for the same service.
Okay.
But we could definitely go out for an RFP. It'd probably take us, it might take us a little bit longer than if we just went with the Embark pass-through costs. The other great thing about using the same contractor is they kind of have the control over that contractor, and similar to the bus drivers, it's all kind of interconnected and can function under the Embark umbrella.
Okay. Well, I'd be okay with option 2 as well then, in that case. And I think it's a cost we always anticipated we'd have to incur at some point
Yeah.
as the use became larger, as more and more people use the transit center. And so, yeah, I'm
Okay.
okay with starting with that and seeing how that goes.
Well, I'll work with, excuse me, I'll work with Embark and city legal staff and their staff to start drafting up amendment with us. We may have to, I don't think the amendment with the security contractors happened yet, so we'll likely have to wait for that to happen before we could go through with ours. But we'll flush out any issues that we have with any of those amendments, and you'll likely see that in the next month or so, and hopefully we can get it started in the next couple months. So. All right. And that- basically what I just said, so I forgot I had another slide. I'm happy to move on to the next item, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Talking about service options to the Adult Wellness and Education Center. So we talked about this a little bit last month and wanted to come back with a little bit more information. So, and I have maps for the adjustments and some more information for Embark Well as well. But the three options that seem for be the most reasonable and up for discussion are adjusting Route 121, adjusting Route 122, or providing Embark Well service, which is a service that's provided in Oklahoma City to people that are 60 and older, and they can only go to a wellness location in the nearest one to their house. So it's a way to encourage them to stay active, to participate in programs, and if they're not eligible for paratransit service, this is an option for that population. So the 121 route adjustment we talked about a little bit last month. It would remove the service from the Porter Avenue, which is one way right now going southbound, and then provide it on Finley, one way southbound. But when Larry and his team in operations looked at it, it doesn't seem like it'd have the room in the schedule to accommodate adding the distance, however minor it may seem, to go over to Finley and go down Finley to get back on the route. And that's shown here, where basically blue is what we're doing right now with 121, and we would go a little bit further east. I added a potential stop up there at Robinson and Finley because it'd probably be nice to have a little bit location closer to the fairgrounds, but I don't know that this would work if we wanted to keep 121 on a 30-minute schedule, which I don't think we want to alter it. If we start getting, schedules at 35 minutes, 40 minutes, it just kind of throws off people's mindsets of when the bus is going to be there. So the adjustment to 122, again, we talked about this a little bit last month. I like this one a little bit more because we could provide it potentially bi-directionally, which would be nice. But we would lose service as shown on 12th between Main and Robinson, and also on Main between 12th and Finley. Now, there's 3 stops there shown that are still served by Route 111, so those would still maintain service, but the ones in yellow would no longer receive service. And the Walmart stop there on the east side, just north of Main, has 4 or 5 boardings per day. It's not minimal, but it's not a lot, but it is pretty good ridership. We are going to go through our automatic passenger counters and try to calibrate those, make sure they're working properly. So we may be able to come back in a few months and give additional data on that. But the rest of them seem to not have a lot of ridership. But just the reality is we'd be losing this connection. I also feel like, just anecdotally, I see a lot of people, or I see some people sometimes standing at that Walmart stop to go north, which indicates to me that we have a good connection between the Garland Square apartments and a grocery store that's direct, and people are going back that direction. Or they could be going to High Meadows or another area, but there seems to be a good connection of people going out and not going back in to go somewhere else, right? So If we did make this change, you can see there, we could go down Robinson and Finley, and again, provide that bidirectional service. I'm throwing in a couple other stop ideas, including the one at the All, which would be just there south of Johnson on the west side of Finley. And that one was doable, but multiple bus stops would be affected. And with either route adjustment, we'd have capital costs of adding or removing bus stops. So, and possibly including sidewalk additions just to make sure that the access paths are adequate for ADA to and from the bus stops. And so the third option we wanted to talk about a little bit is Embark Well, which again is a program provided in Oklahoma City that's been up there for about, I think 4 or 5 years. So they provide service Monday through Friday from 7 to 7. And Dr. Marilyn Dillon wanted to be here to be able to answer your questions in depth, but she wasn't able to make it today. So I'm going to do my best, and I can follow up later if you have some questions I can't answer. But they do include places that offer wellness programs but are not for profit. So that's hence the YMCA locations. City parks, so if there's a park that is activated frequently on programming once a week or so, that could be considered. And then the MAPS 3 wellness centers, but like our AWE center, right? So again, available to seniors 60 plus at no cost. Here's some of their ridership in the last, from FY19 to 22. So it kind of fluctuates. As you can see, it goes down in the winter time, but they do seem to keep growing this program. And interestingly, they don't provide it, somewhat similar to what we're talking about with VIA and the on-demand service. They don't provide it directly. They contract with another company, and they have multiple providers in Oklahoma City they work with, but they work with the private contractors to get those people where they need to go, and basically Embark pays for that trip, if that makes sense. So trying to not have to add on the vehicles and drivers and things, but pushing those rides to private contractors that are out there. So we'd have to flush that out a little bit, make sure that those private contractors would be available in Norman, or we could look at what that would look like to do it in-house if we wanted to see, if we wanted to start a pilot program of this service. So that's, I have a little bit more information. I think in your packet, a Embark Well case study was provided. It's a little old, but there's a new one coming out this fall. They just haven't finalized it and published it. But they do see a lot of increases in people's wellness that participate. It seems they did a case study with a focus group, and it seems to work out pretty well. And if that's the goal of trying to get more service to the Embark or to the AWE, this could be a way to supplement that without having to alter bus routes to do that, at least initially, test it out here. So
I was gonna ask, is there a way to get feedback from people who are wanting, like, I guess through the AWE, and ask if they would be interested in Embark Wellness or Embark Well versus like a route change?
yeah, we could do another survey that's more targeted questions like that. Yeah.
I'm curious how many of them are actually riding the bus versus like how many would probably pick the Embark Well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, so.
Right. No, we could work with the contractor, Healthy Living, to try to get another survey out. We did one at the beginning of the year. They didn't ask as pointed questions as that. We were just trying to get the feel of how they access the AWE. But I think we could do another survey and ask what their preferred transportation option would be.
I kind of think they would pick Embark Well, but I don't know. I guess if you were 50 plus, you would just like pay for Embark Well, and if you're 60 plus, it's free.
No, I think they just offer it to 60
60
plus.
plus.
That's it. Yeah.
So if you had somebody in that 50 to 60 range that was also wanted better accessibility, paratransit.
If they're eligible for paratransit, they could always be on paratransit. I'm trying to think, what's the age requirement for the AW? Is it 50? 50, it's not 55. So I think if we're leaning that direction, I'd like to go back to Dr. Dillon and brainstorm and flush out this a little bit more. And we could talk about, well, could Embark Well and Norman be 50 plus, right? Because that's the membership that AW accepts. Now with that could come increased demand and increased usage, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just could increase the cost, but we could brainstorm that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd wanna, if we did that, I'd wanna think about how that could be paid for. You know, being potentially part of the user fee, I don't know, for people that you'd have memberships there.
Yeah.
Or being reimbursed by Medicare or Medicaid, I don't know, but is this, it would be 47,000 a year? for
Well, that was their budget for Embark Well in Oklahoma City, at least
Okay.
that's my understanding. So I think,
Ours would probably be a lot less.
I would hope, but I think that's a part of the brainstorming with Marilyn I'd like to do
Yeah.
and maybe come back. Hopefully she can join me next month and we can flush it out a bit more and maybe have a budget. Like I said, a lot of it will depend on if the contractors are in the area, if we want to go that route and push those rides to those contractors, which we're not necessarily talking to organizations that haven't been vetted and their drivers are trained and all that. So, but we'd have to make sure they're here. Or if we think that the usage is somewhat low, I could ask Dr. Dillon if maybe we could handle it in-house somehow, but that's not how they do it in Oklahoma City. So we'd have to think about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely hesitant to remove stops that are existing. I do wonder, is that new stop that's at Robinson and 12th, it's on the west side of the street, is that being up, the one that's at the top, the yellow
Okay.
one?
Right here?
Yeah, is there a lot of people getting on and off at that? Like, there's nothing really there.
Exactly. We like to keep stops near intersections with crosswalks and, near major intersections. So I think
Okay.
this was a strategic place to put both,
For them to go across.
right? So you could have one in each direction.
Okay.
But I think other than that, the Walmart area, I think we're seeing maybe not as high ridership on these stops that we'd like to, but we could, it's been less than a year, right? So
And which
that's one
one?
reason
Because
why.
the Walmart stop that's on the west side there, that one has been there forever. Or there's been a stop right there forever.
So, yeah, that's when we used to drive through the whole
Yes.
parking lot with a big bus and then, so we technically moved that stop over to here to get it off of the private roads. I think we added this one back on 12th whenever we did the route changes, but yeah, it's kind of been there. The great thing about this route is, and I know this is kind of far out, but if this area gets some other type of use, right, as we've been talking about the last few years with the Griffin land, this is situated really well to have a great connection between downtown and this area to get people from the transit center, from other areas to the transit center and then here. So again, that doesn't mean that we can't change it, but
Okay. Well, yeah, I do have a little bit of hesitancy about removing stops. I definitely would like to explore the Embark Well more in depth for sure, and see if that's something the users of the AW would be interested in. It wouldn't, the stop at Porter and Johnson wouldn't be so bad if it was connected to the AW from there, but there's no continuous sidewalk and it's all weird and curved with the old hospital entrance right there. And neither of the sidewalks connect to the AW yet on Johnson Street, so it's just not the easiest path for people to walk, even if they're able-bodied.
Yeah, and there is concrete there, there's a sidewalk, but we wouldn't necessarily call ADA compliant, which is part of the problem. And we're hoping as that area redevelops, hopefully it'll come into better condition and maybe provide that better access, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, on one side it ends before it gets to the on the other. Well, on both sides it ends before it gets there, and then it just turns into the street.
Right,
So, and it's also downhill and then uphill.
right, so that's what I mean, there's technically concrete and sidewalk there, but it's not necessarily up to standards, so.
So
And it would be quite my understanding, I think we may have talked about this a little bit last month, but it would be quite the price tag to bring all that up, and then if the development occurs, it's probably gonna change it anyway, so. Yeah, cause the stop is technically, I think, 0.28 miles, so it's pretty close to what we would define as a, 0.25 or a quarter of a mile from a bus stop is a pretty standard for transit, but the access path is not great, yeah.
right, you gotta cross a 4-lane street, and then the sidewalks don't connect to it.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe when the hospital gets redeveloped, that'll be fixed, but until then, it is an issue, so. Definitely, would want to know more about the Embark well, and if that would work, to address that concern about transit options going to the awe.
Yeah, and like I said, that could help, it could be a way as a stopgap until we get a better access or something else changes. It could be a flexible program. We could explore maybe going to the Y, using the program too, if we wanted to, because that's what they do in Oklahoma City. Again, it's nonprofit kind of wellness, city parks if we have ongoing wellness programming. So yeah, I'll go back over the next month. I'll try to brainstorm with Marilyn, and maybe we can come back with some more fleshed out details.
And if you're asking the all folks, will you be also presenting, this could go to the city park or the Y, or?
Yeah, I think we tell them all those options. So obviously we don't want to tell them that we're not going to take them there, but we're trying to get the most bang for our buck. And so if they're closer to the Y, we may encourage them to go there. But because we're not 600 square miles Oklahoma City, it might be easier to take them to the off they want to instead of to their nearest one, right? So
Okay.
again, just try to flesh out those details.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate it, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks.
I did want to mention too, before I forget, I did notice the work going on at the transit center with the stop and front facing Porter.
Yes.
Excited to see that.
And we have the bench. I'm just trying to get it scheduled to install, so it's
Okay.
it's sitting up at our maintenance facility, waiting to go down there.
Awesome. And then the Lindsay Street stop across from Millennium and in front of Faculty Heights Park.
Park. Yeah. So I still find that tied with the conversation with Tyler Media on new locations for furniture. So we're trying to get that flushed out maybe by the end of the year, so they can get an order in and we can start putting things down. So that's on the list, as well as Main and Reed on the east side, or I'm sorry, the south side. I don't know why my brain thought east, but on the south side, just looking at those locations and other locations in town, we can increase our street furniture. That makes sense for both parties.
Yes, the Lindsay Street one is where I see the most people standing around.
Yeah, and that one,
Facing a real busy street too.
it is, but when I passed it the other day, I was reminded that it has pretty good tree shade there,
Yeah.
so that's nice. I know that we need maybe a bench or shelter for people to sit down, but I forgot that there was trees so close to the sidewalk, so that's a plus with that one.
Yeah, potentially a larger pad. I don't know.
Yeah, and that pad was just for the landing pad. It has to be 8 feet by 5 feet at least. So if we added a shelter or a bench, we'd have to enlarge the pad. So
Okay. Yeah.
that's the minimum. So if you roll out your ramp on the bus, you had to have so much room for somebody to get off using the ramp. So if you see that little weird jut in other places, that's what it's for.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Taylor.
Yep.
Okay, item number 4 on the agenda today is a initial discussion regarding road diets and roundabouts. And we have city staff here to have that conversation with us.
Thank you. Tim Miles, Capital Projects Manager. And this was an item that was added towards the last minute that we just found out about. So what we were hoping to do was just get a little bit of more direction from you so we could prepare a detailed presentation for the next meeting. Like what specific projects you want to talk about? Are there some areas of town that you want us to look at or so we don't have a formal
Yeah, sure.
presentation put together.
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually do have a spot. It's either stop signs or a roundabout. It's off Crawford. I'm trying to navigate there. You know where West McMichael Music?
We're already looking at that. There's Alameda.
Alameda and
Crawford.
Crawford.
Yeah, that's the
So,
name I was struggling for.
My understanding on that one was that was a budget request item for a study there, but I don't believe it made the final cut. So right now, that area is not actually being studied. But it is something that we realize is a priority and need to work that in when there's funds available.
Would, for right now, an extra stop, or could that be something that addresses resident concern?
Yes,
until-
I'll have David Reason, our transportation engineer, weigh in on that. And I think he'll probably, if he's available for the next meeting, we'll have him attend along with our interim director.
Yeah, I've had my dad's even asked me about that one. Just because it does have 5 intersections or 5.
5 legs.
Yeah, and 2 of them don't have stop signs. The other 3 do. It
Right.
can be a little confusing for sure, and I feel like it used to be an all-way stop
Okay.
at one time, but it does seem like a good spot for a potentially a roundabout in the future. I would be interested to see what the funding for that study would cost.
Okay.
Because I don't recall seeing that come before us. So, but really, the intent of the discussion, from my standpoint, was to try to identify intersections throughout the city that might be currently 4-way stops, or not, and maybe they're even signalized, that could be good candidates for roundabouts. And I've seen some roundabouts that are in rural areas, like where two lane country section line roads meet each other, and there's a roundabout, and they're not as extensive as the new one we just built, or even the one on Main Street. They're a smaller scale. They seem to work pretty well. I came across several in Texas, and I was just reading how Florida and Texas are number 1 and number 2, maybe number 3 in the number of roundabouts per state. And Florida is more than double the number 2 state. So there were almost 14,000 nationwide. I was recently reading, and that Florida had the most, and Texas and California were 2 and 3. And that some of them are in just little 2-lane roads that intersect. And I thought a lot about some of the rural intersections we have that are 4-way stops, if they would be good candidates for roundabouts without the whole extensive having to widen out the entire intersection and do the whole build out like we do with some of these urban ones we have. But really just that, where throughout the city, I don't know if it's a study necessarily, but some way to identify on a more broad scale where conversions like that would be appropriate, where they might help traffic flow the best, where they might help safety, like reducing collisions, specifically fatality collisions. Someone even mentioned to me recently that Franklin, by the county jail, when you're coming off I-35 onto Highway 77, right in front of the county jail and Johnson Controls, there's that stoplight there. And someone was like, wouldn't it be nice if that was a roundabout? And as you came in, it slowed you down, but you could still keep going without that light right there. But, and just spots like that. So that's what kind of got the motivation for that anyway. When it comes to roundabouts, it's just kind of a citywide evaluation of where they might be most appropriate, where they would help traffic flow, where they would help reduce collisions and fatalities.
Okay,
So
okay.
I know it's not just like a simple thing to go, "Oh, let's go," but I know staff has a lot of data about all the intersections in Norman and different things like that. So
I haven't seen much on the new comprehensive transportation plan. I don't know if it's addressing anything like that
Yeah, I
or
don't
not.
know.
I'm not aware that it is, but
well, and one of the biggest complaints I always hear from people in Norman is about traffic lights. People, there's so many traffic lights, and why can't we sync them all up? And a lot of them are, and I know the city's been working on that for like the last 20 years, trying to sync up. But when, it seems like a lot of folks want it to be synced on whatever direction they're going at the time.
Oh, exactly.
So,
now when the traffic management center, and I think that's close to
yeah,
being bid, when that comes about, a lot of intersections will be better than they are today.
and I'm definitely
peak
looking forward
times.
to seeing the data on before and after how that looks as far as efficiency or reducing crashes or whatever it might be. But yeah, that is one of the biggest complaints I always hear is about how many traffic lights there are and how long it takes to get across town because of it. But so that's just something I wanted to kind of have some sort of citywide evaluation of where we could, some sort of roadmap in the future, because I don't know if the comprehensive plan is getting down to that type of detail that, well, this intersection should be a roundabout in the future.
Right.
It should be a traffic signal.
Yeah, I don't believe it is, but I haven't seen it, haven't been overly involved with it. It's been above my level, so I'm not for sure,
Perfect.
but we'll find out. And then related to road diets, kind of a similar thing, just,
Yeah, there's so some of the streets, mostly in urban, older parts of Norman, like Boyd and Classen and Porter. I know city staff's been looking at Alameda as well, but specifically like Boyd and Classen and Porter. Boyd is a 4-lane street, but it's the width of a 3-lane street. Same thing with Porter and Classen. The traffic on Boyd through the part that goes through Campus Corner is pretty fast and not the most comfortable to walk across
right.
or walk along. Same thing with Porter, especially now with the new sidewalks, which are right up against the street. Without street parking, I've noticed from Friendly Market's perspective, I've noticed traffic on Porter is driving faster now that there's nobody backing out to, create a reason for them to stop.
Right.
And so thinking about that, and then Classen is almost entirely residential from Alameda all the way to almost Lindsay, with the exception of the Mont, of course, and that gas station on the corner. But you got the school there, and it's a neighborhood setting. So those have been 3 that I've been thinking about that have been discussed for a long time in Norman. I know when we're thinking about like peak traffic and how to handle it, but then you think about like 22, 23 hours a day, there's very light traffic on Boyd and on Classen and on Porter for that matter. And so like with the bus stop situation by the old hospital now, at Johnson and Porter, if a senior citizen gets off at that bus stop, they have to cross 4 lanes of Porter, busy traffic, and even though it's the same distance from curb to curb, 3 lanes is easier to cross than 4 lanes. One less lane that's likely to hit you, I guess. And so that's kind of been my thinking on it, is these streets being pedestrian focused and what's best for the pedestrians and the businesses, and not necessarily what's the best way to get as much traffic through as possible. And because like with Boyd, it's 2 lanes, west of Flood, and it's 2 lanes east of Classen. So it's only 4 lanes in that little section.
Right.
And so those are just 3 that I've really thought a lot about over the years, that are urban core areas that have a lot of pedestrians and things like that. So, but I know there's other larger streets throughout the city that staff's been looking at, like Alameda and West 48th and
Yeah, those two.
whatnot. So that's
Okay.
kind of where I was coming from on that one. And especially with Porter, because kind of the conversation has always been that, yes, but we need to wait till James Garner opens and see how that does. And I definitely noticed traffic seems to be picking up on James Garner now that it's
is.
the first couple weeks. It was like, is anybody going to use it? They don't know it's here yet. Now when I've been driving on it, I'm seeing more and more traffic using it. So that being like one of the ways where if more traffic is using that new James Garner, there's less maybe traffic on Porter. We could look at the thing, but every day when I'm out there, the more and more I see people walking down the new sidewalks, I feel like, man, traffic is moving fast. We've talked about lowering the speed limit even to 25 from 30, even though that's just lowering the speed limit doesn't mean people will drive slower. But if it says 30, people are driving 35 to 40. If it says 25, maybe they don't go over 35. But now I've got people saying that the new James Garner, it's only 25, and they're like, that's too slow. It needs to be 35. So interesting.
With
to
no
me.
turns in that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been pretty slow through there.
Yes, and that we need a stop sign at Acres again on that side, I guess, is what I've been hearing. But yeah, that's kind of where, for me anyway, the conversation about road diets on existing streets in Norman, and kind of just further evaluating that now that we've done some of these projects,
Okay.
and that we're doing 2-way on Gray and planning to do it on Main Street at some point as well, and how that all just connects together.
Okay. I'll pass that information along, and I'm sure some of this has already been looked at in the works by traffic, so they'll probably have a lot more to share than I will. But
Yeah, the Porter not having a left turn lane, I often see people at Eufaula and Porter in front of Friendly Market, when they're coming up to it and they want to turn left, they stop, and then everybody behind them, some of them will stop, but others will swerve around them and keep trying to go. And then when traffic on Porter at Alameda is trying to turn left to go east on Alameda, that there is a short little left turn lane, but then it terminates and people just back up on it anyway. So
okay.
it just, and our streetscape didn't address that issue at all. So we just repaved it the way it was. So
Right. Yeah, I don't know when the last time a study's been done on that, but I think Scott and David will have those answers. So we'll pull out what we know and what we can share.
yeah, and
Go on
not,
from there.
and two, just not just number of cars per day, if that's what was, but like when is that peak traffic and how long does it last? And so I don't necessarily want the street to be designed in a way that just to deal with traffic for 1 hour a day, Monday through Friday. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the direction I'm trying to go with that.
Okay. Appreciate the additional information.
Yeah.
So we know what to focus on.
Anything you want to do? Okay. I think too, with Gray being 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane, Main Street being 1 lane each direction with a center turn lane, it seems like it would connect really well for Porter, Classen to mirror that, and then Boyd be the same as that as well, and then they all are the same kind of way. Because that Boyd, and we've talked a lot about Boyd and Asp, and like how it's probably the most heavily used pedestrian intersection in Norman, and how it can be definitely a little uncomfortable to cross, for sure, and that there's no left turn lane to turn into Campus Corner. There's no left turn lane to turn into the campus right there. One leg has a arrow, the other leg doesn't, and so
Okay.
it's yeah.
Yeah, and I think David has some more information on Boyd, or they're looking into a study or something. So
Now that some of the new apartments in Center City that have been built, like on Monette and Boyd, that are right up to the sidewalk, Like we were walking that area last year on like a group walking tour of the Center City area. And it was really noticeable how like fast cars were driving by on Boyd, and how it didn't feel very comfortable to be standing out there on the sidewalk. And that's kind of, we're trying to make it where people feel more comfortable being on the sidewalk in those areas, and why we wanted the buildings to go close up to the curb in the first place. So that's just some of the observations we had when we were out there, and that I notice on Campus Corner all the time. But yeah,
Okay. We'll put something together and have it for the next meeting.
awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and
Sure.
everybody on staff, appreciate your time being here. If there's no further comment, then this meeting is adjourned.